Ouija, Origin of Evil. So Ouija Origin of Evil serves as a prequel to the 2014 Ouija movie. This time around it takes place in 1960s Los Angeles. It follows the story of a single mother named Alice and her two daughters Lena and Doris. This little family runs a little seance scam inside their own house. They tell themselves they do it to bring closure to other people who are mourning from a loss instead of telling themselves that they desperately need the money. On one particular day, the mother decides to grab a Ouija board as a new prop for their scam. However, this Ouija board ends up bringing a lot more trouble than paying customers. That's all I'll pretty much say without giving any spoilers to you guys. This is a spoiler-free review. I'm just going to tell you what I liked about the film, what I didn't like, hit you with a rating system just like this one, let you know if you see it in the cinema, rent it, or maybe just avoid the film completely. And starting off, I want to say I'm a huge horror fan. Horror is probably my most favorite genre out there. If not, it's definitely in the top 2. But with that said, my least favorite type of films out there are the ones that deal with paranormal activities, ghosts, demonic possessions. It's not that that stuff scares me, I just feel that market is just so oversaturated and it's rare to find a good film in that bunch. But you do have your hidden gems like your Insidious, your Conjuring films. Still, that's mostly attributed to James Wan being a great horror director or just a great director in itself. And speaking of great directors, I can safely say that Mike Flanagan is a great horror director and I'm definitely looking forward to whatever projects he has coming up next. Mike Flanagan is the one who directed Oculus and Hush, 2 films that are above and beyond in the horror genre. He's the only reason I was willing to give this film a shot because I hated the 2014 version of Ouija. And this film does everything right that the first film just did completely wrong. This one actually takes the time to delve into the characters, to delve into the story. Starting off with the mother, Alice, played by Elizabeth Reaser. You don't just get the idea that she's this cuckoo psychic. No, she's a loving mother who's trying to protect their children while also build a living for them so they can have a better life. And then you have Lena, the older sister, played by Annalise Basso. She's dealing with typical teenage problems, falling for boys, rebelling against mothers, being mean to their little sister. But again, she's not a one-dimensional character either. She's trying to deal with the loss of her father, taking care of her sister, and also trying to mend the relationship between her and her mother. And then you have sweet and innocent little Doris, played by Lulu Wilson. She was the one I was most worried about going into this film because usually if you're the little girl being possessed, you turn into a brick who just spouts out demonic lines. And like I said, it's been done hundreds of millions of times before. I was just not interested to see it, but this little girl made me care for her. These 3 characters are what make the film watchable and interesting. On the subject of interesting, this film also takes the time to delve into their story and really build it up and keep you in mystery until that final act when you figure out what's what. And that's actually what makes a good horror film, when you have story over scares. Scares are very important in horror films, but if you don't have a nice story to back it up, no one cares about it when you scare them. Just entirely surprised with how much I ended up liking this film, given the fact that I did not enjoy the first one, that I'm not a fan of demonic / paranormal activity type films. Another win for Mike Flanagan, but even though I did have a really good time with this film, there were a couple things that bugged me along the way. For one, the dialogue at times is pretty bad. Not most of the time, just here and there they give out a line where I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound good. And then because they did take the time to delve into the story and build the characters, the scares in this film are pretty spread out. That's not a bad thing for me, but I understand some people will walk away going, I wasn't that scary, there wasn't enough scary things going on. That's a negative if you're that type of person. And the last big thing that really bothered me and brought it a grade level down in my opinion is the final act just really is hit or miss. Like I said, the build-up is done very well, and when you find out what's going on, you are still interested, but the way it plays out, could have been handled a little better. It's at this point where some of the scariest things do happen, but then some of the most laughable things also happen. And then it gets a little confusing within that ending because sometimes you have these little dream sequences pop out in the middle of what's going on. And then the ending just leaves you with a little like, okay. It was just really that chunk of the movie that brought it down for me, but not enough for me to call this a bad film because it is not a bad film at all. It is actually a really great horror film. High recommendation to anybody out there, and in fact, you do not have to see the 2014 version to enjoy this one. There are maybe a 1% of connectivity between those films, and honestly, all that is one death is sort of similar to the first one, and it's the same house. That's pretty much it. But anyways, guys, that's just my opinion on Ouija Origin of Evil. On a side note, did anybody else in the film experience those cue marks, one of these things? Because for some reason it kept happening in my theater, and I don't know if they were just playing along with that, going with the 60s vibe, or maybe I just need to change theaters. But as always, guys, I'm Chris, and I leave with the 3C Film Review. Take care.